Thank you all for being here today. And yeah, the rhythm of God. Oh boy, man, we have some good music today, didn't we? Well, don't we? So we're actually, last week I told you all I surrender. And I still surrender. And you know what? When I surrender to God, I'm doing that right here. I surrender because God is in charge, not me. And so if I ever get in my own way, I need to remember myself, get out of the way, okay? There's some words to be spoken here. And I got the message today, and the message was about divine timing, in God's time. And how many of us have wanted to force things to happen in our own time? Anybody? Yeah, just about everybody. We do sometimes feel like we want to force things to happen. We got to get it done now. Or, gosh, I should have done that yesterday. How come? And then we get hard on ourselves when it doesn't happen, right? Oh my gosh, how come I didn't do that? I knew I was supposed to do that. I was even told. I got the message, right? And sometimes when we're tapped in, we get that message and then we just, maybe there's something stopping us. And we don't know what it is. And sometimes we do. We know it's us getting in our own way. But wow, I surrender not to the circumstances that are around me, but to God and to the power of God. So saying I surrender, which was last week's daily word, doesn't mean that I'm just going to give up and surrender. Okay, that's it. This is my lot in life, God. This is what I have. I'm going to deal. I'm just going to accept it. Well, acceptance is a big part of surrendering to God. And why I give this prelude to divine timing is because we do need to accept God's love and light in our lives to see divine timing at work. Sometimes it's not till after the fact. But that's divine timing too. So trusting in timing, but before I do that, I want to tell you something because, Unity, we practice the teachings of Jesus, the Christ here in Unity, for anybody here for the first time. And so that means we take a deeper look and we walk in the deep waters here. We go through the muck. We don't stay in it. We walk through it. And so we look at the deeper meaning, which means we take a metaphysical look at everything. Anybody like that? I'm like that. I get out my metaphysical dictionary. What does this mean? Okay, in the physical, we see how things show up if we rely only on our eyes, but we know there's something bigger at hand. We all know we're being prepared for something bigger. And so Levon and I had a discussion last week. I'm mentioning this, there's centipedes showing up in the building for some reason. So I got my metaphysical dictionary to find out why. So why do we have centipedes showing up inside of our building? It is about adoption and resilience, inner strength, purification and cleansing, change and transformation. Yes, we got a lot going on. Now, in the physical sense, what does it mean? It means you have moisture and humidity issues. Okay, so we know that there's something more. It also says that if there's a shift or a sense in change of energy, centipedes can show up with all of their sensitive feet. They're sensing the change on the ground. So anyway, I thought I'd share that, the divine timing. I know it may not completely relative, but it was perfect timing. So have you ever wondered why something didn't work out the way it was thought it was going to work out to be, or when you wanted it to be, and the timing may have felt off in life? Well, I have a story of a man in his 40s. And he had a job for over 10 years. He held a job. And this was a job where he thought he was indispensable and that his value was worthy of something at work. And then suddenly he gets laid off. And I don't know if any of you have ever been laid off from a job, but having been laid off from a job it can really take a toll on what you thought was going to happen. And it can hit really hard. And with Jason, he actually said, I didn't think it was going to happen to me. I heard of it happening to other people, but I didn't think it was going to happen to me. And so what happened was it shook him so much, it shook his faith, that he started to pray and started to meditate. He started to meditate to listen to God and pray to talk to God. We know that as Unity Principle 4 here. So what he did do was something that he absolutely loved. He started to fill his time as he was looking and searching for something else. And he started to build custom furniture in his own front yard. And it was a hobby, a pastime of his. And he found that to be very enjoyable. And he really, really was enjoying that time. Instead of panicking, he learned to calm, pray, meditate, do something you love. I was having this talk with somebody earlier in the week. Do what you love and the money will follow. And that's a spiritual law. He started the side hustle, and within a year, he started it into a business. And that business was prosperous and flourished for him. He was able to make a living out of it. So that story was basically about his not bad timing, because we can look at the actual physical sense of, oh, poor thing, that happened to you. And it does. It happens to a lot of us. But we get to also look at the responsibility and the prosperity in that is, wow, he built something great out of a bad situation. And he was divinely redirected at the right time, because now he's working in something that gives him more purpose in his life, instead of the job he was applying for over a year, applying for. So he was meant, the deeper meaning of Jason's situation was he was meant to be working in purpose and on purpose. And how many times in our lives do we go with the flow, or maybe just accept where we are? And this is called comfort. And sometimes our divine timing will take us out of our comfort zone, like Jason, who had a nice, comfortable corporate job, but the company actually closed their doors. And it led him to passion in his life. It gave him that hope that he opened up his soul's purpose and was able to live in that time. But we don't always look at it as a perfect time when there's an in-between time of struggle or despair or lack of hope. That point in time, it feels like there's such a gap. There's such a gap in God working in our lives, right? That sometimes we can't see it. Maybe it doesn't go according to our plans, but we know it's going according to God's plan in our life. God's plan. God has a plan. And so in Ecclesiastes 3:1, I'm going to speak slow, and if anybody wants to write that down, there is some paper you have in some of your seats. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. We are in heaven. We know that here in Unity. We are living in heaven, or we're living in hell. We get to choose. That's where our responsibility comes in here in Unity. Do we want to live that life of suffering and torture and bring that into our lives? And Jason very well could have taken that route of how terrible this is and gone a certain direction by focusing on those things. And so instead, according to the divine redirection and giving into the timing of it all, fell into purpose of unfolding his passion, what he liked to do. I know for me, I was in between jobs at one time, and this actually works, this divine timing. It was a point of, okay, I need to work. The economy had a downturn. External circumstances come to us a lot that we can't control. Economy, health, illness, disease, financial, and there's another one that I just missed, family status. So the economy came in, and I said, well, you know what? I'm going to do something I really like to do. Of course, I started volunteering at church a lot more, but I also started volunteering at the library. There was a place where I could go teach adults. And I said, oh, this looks like fun. I'm going to do this. And so it takes you into a redirection, right? And when the doors open, well, that's when it's time to step through, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. Once we get redirected. And Isaiah 60:22, it says, when the time is right, God will make it happen. So we can say that over and over again. When the time is right, God will make it happen in all things. So what's the difference between God's time and man's time? Well, in God's time, we know and we learn patience and unfolding of purpose. But in man's time, we know deadlines and pressures. In man's time, we know instant gratification. I want it now. But in God's time, it's an eternal perspective. And we talked 2 weeks ago about the eternal clock. And divine order has a lot to do with that. Man's time is control and calculation, where God's time is about surrendering and trusting. Man's time is fear of delay, but God's time is faith in divine timing. So, what about those times when we're put in the waiting room of life? There's a Dr. Seuss book that's a popular one given for graduations. What is it called? Yes, it's the place, the waiting room where we are waiting for something to happen and all the doors seem to be closed. And we're in the waiting room, I like to call it God's waiting room, and we're waiting for something to happen. So what is that? Well, another example is, what about the couple who is trying to conceive and they can't conceive a baby? And they're years and years and years and they cannot conceive a baby. And then they finally make a decision to go adopt. And once they decide they're going to go adopt a child, they open their hearts to love. They open their hearts to possibility. They open their hearts to a space that they didn't know when the doors were closed to that. And they were in the waiting room. When are we going to have a baby? When is this going to happen? When is that going to happen? Well, they opened a door of adoption. And as soon as they adopt the baby, that same year, they became pregnant. So that open door of love and allowing energy of a child to come into their lives sprouted them a brand new family faster than they thought. So this family example is an outcome of transforming into that opening a door. What happens when we open a door? Maybe you're in the waiting room and you keep knocking on the same door. Anybody been there? You're knocking on the same door and it just doesn't open. But there's several doors in the waiting room. And that's a hard place to be, especially if you have a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of doors. But some don't have a lot of opportunity, so there may not be as many doors in the waiting room. We all have different waiting rooms we've been in throughout lives. You know, what's that? Let's make a deal. Yeah, open door A, door B, or door C. You know, remember that show? So there's growth in waiting, and some of that growth includes some of our spiritual laws, which are patience, fortitude, endurance, and hope. These are all qualities, spiritual qualities that God gives us. Patience grows spiritual maturity for us. Fortitude sharpens our emotional strength. Endurance trains us to stay the course, because it doesn't mean to give up on what your dream is. It just may not be labeled on the door in the waiting room. You may not see it yet. Maybe you have to open one door to get to another door. But that growth in waiting, that's the divine timing, the rhythm, okay? And when it comes to music, I come from a family of musicians. So I grew up listening to the guitar play in the living room all the time. There was always a rhythm. And when the song is done, that's when you get up. or when the song is complete, that's when you eat dinner, or during dinner, or there's a lot of shifts, when there's a rhythm that's going on in the background. Remember, God's rhythm is always going on in the background, always. So we get to breathe into that. So we develop the spiritual muscles we need while we're in the waiting room. That's what, those are hope, endurance, fortitude, and patience. But when you feel like you're in the waiting room of life, sometimes we can feel like we're stuck there. Maybe, it might be a 6-month waiting room. It might be a 10-year waiting room. We don't know how long it's going to be, but the doors will open up. God, correct my perception so I may see the doors open before me of opportunity in my life. And we can say that and repeat that in our lives. If we feel that there's an answer that you don't have, or if there's truth that you don't feel that you have received, or if there's spirit they may be lacking somewhere, or with a loved one, we get to actually share all these principles, these God principles that we've been given here in Unity. That, yes, they will show up. Healing is here. Healing is here now. We are not just doomed because we made a mistake in life that God gave us this lot in life. Oh, this is just my lot in life. No, you have doors to open. And they've been given to us as we practice with our meditation and our prayer. We get to listen. Those doors are here now. They may not be the ones you thought they were going to be, but they all bloom just like a flower. It will all start somewhere. So, how does divine timing help you release the pressure of the deadlines in your own life as we practice this? Or maybe we want answers now. Well, when Jesus was walking the path, and a lot of people love Jesus's concepts. Jesus didn't go right for the Pharaoh because the Pharaoh was doing wrong, did he? No, Jesus built a community and built on his concepts that God's love is within all of us. And so that is who we know is truth, is God. Okay, so anchored by eternal timing. See, we're still talking about Jesus 2,000 years later. Eternal timing. When the time is right, God will make it happen. In Isaiah 60:22. So how do you step through an open door? Well, when you walk through the door that God opens for you, we walk through with gratitude, acknowledgement that God's grace is here. And readiness. You have already been prepared by sitting in the waiting room for so long that your readiness has happened undercover. God prepared you for this open door and developed the patience that you needed for whatever that open door had for you or has for you. Also, how do we step through? We step through with obedience to God. If the path feels unfamiliar, which of course that's another point in time, sometimes we operate so much in our own rhythm, we can become a little fast or a little slow. That's why divine timing is we get to breathe in between each of those steps, because obedience to God's order or timing, we get to be obedient to what we hear, the messages that we hear. And then the hardest one that we all seem to have is trusting in God's timing. Uncertainty, yes, is referred to as the holy ground. There it is. That's it. That's the kicker. How many of us think uncertainty is the worst thing in the world? Uncertainty is holy ground. That's where new things come in. That's where creation happens. That's where ideas happen. That's where people get together. During times of uncertainty, new pathways open up and new doors open up. So for us, one day is 24 hours. During meditation, we were in silence for 1 minute. It can seem a lot longer than that. But in God's time, one day is 1,000 years. And that's Peter 3.8, if anybody wants to write that one down. So with that, I'm going to give us a couple affirmations for the week. And that is, let's start with God's timing is perfect even when it feels uncertain. God's timing is perfect even when it feels uncertain. And the second one is, I trust in the process even when I don't see the outcome. I trust in the process even when I don't see the outcome. Feels good, doesn't it? I don't need to know. All we need to know is what we're walking on right now. All right, so with that, let's say a closing prayer. God, thank you for reminding us of divine timing, of your timing, God's time, God's rhythm, allowing us to walk and talk in your rhythm, God, and to remember you and your power and presence within us, around our loved ones, surrounding our communities, our homes, our families. We are grateful to know the spirit of truth and the spirit of love with you, God. And thank you so much for these unity principles we get to walk and follow every day, here in the space and as we leave the doors. Amen. Amen, and so it is. Thank you all for being here today. This has been wonderful.